Welcome to Real Talk, Real Women, Breaking the Silence Around Abuse. I am Gemma Serenity Gorokov, your host, and today we have Kesha Brown joining us. Such an honor to have you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure. I'm so excited to be here and to share my story with everyone.
That's amazing. So, indeed, let's start with your story. Can you please tell us a little bit about your life story with an emphasis on the kind of abuse you overcame in your life?
Absolutely. Well, I'm a product of childhood abuse. Mainly, I saw my father abuse my mother for many years, and the impact that it had on me as a child grew with me as I became an adult. So the memories that I have was very traumatic for me. And I realized growing up that I had to make a change, that I had to change differently for my life. I had to choose different for my life. And even when seeing my mom go through what she went through day after day, coming home from school, seeing the bruises on her face, the wounds, the scratches, all of the signs of abuse, and how that impacted me, even at the age of 9. I remember one particular time, I was coming home from school and my mom she had shades on, and I said, what happened? Like, what happened? What did he do to you? And I remember telling her, why don't you just leave? Um, and her response was very vague, very sad and melancholy. And it was like, here I am at the age of 8 or 9. I decided at that moment that I was going to leave. So I decided to get my little book bag and whatever other bags and pack my clothes, as many as I can, and push it in. And, I said, I'm going to leave. So I chose to go live with my grandmother, who lived on the other side of town. And my grandmother was my saving grace, her and my grandfather. And so when I got to my grandmother's house, I said, I'm never going back there. And she said, it's okay, baby, you don't have to. That was the moment that I decided that enough was enough. I could no longer watch my mom be in such pain at the hands of my father. And shortly after, she decided, maybe, I think it was about 2 months, she decided to leave because I was no longer there.
So in your case, and in the case of your mom, she was also staying for the kids, meaning for you. Yes. So if you were not here anymore, there was no more compelling reason to stay together, because in one interesting and peculiar train of thoughts, parents have to stay together for the kids. When truth be told, if it is a situation of domestic violence, of abuse, of constant picking on each other, and really a toxic environment, much better off to split.
Yes.
Be the protagonist, protect the children from that toxic relationship, and not necessarily from each relationship with each other. That is not exactly the same thing.
Right.
It may or may not, depends the case. So, okay. So your mom actually escaped 2 months after you because you actually opened the way. So you were the saving grace of your mom.
Well, you could say that. If you ask her today, I don't think she really recall all the details. I actually wrote a book about it, and it's called Girl, Get Your Power Back. Do you want to be healed? And as I began to write the book, that's when I realized that there still was a level of residue of trauma that I needed to address. As I was writing the book, I decided to go back to therapy because it brought up a bunch of stuff, because I was going back in my memory, and stuff that I chose not to remember came up. The many times my father would ship me down south. Every time my mom threatened to leave, I would wake up and be in somebody else's house. You know, all of those things really left me traumatized. So therapy was the best decision that I could ever make, because even as I was writing the book, Get Your Power Back, I was getting my power back at the same time.
There is something magical, I noticed that as well, when you actually teach or write or convey
Yes,
your path to healing, and you're here, whoa, I should actually swallow my own medicine, right?
yes, yes. And that's exactly what it was, because the funny thing is, I write about, there's one part of the book where I write about, I don't know if you know the artist Mahalia Jackson. She's like an old school gospel singer. And I remember at 9 years old, my mom said, "What do you want for your birthday?" And I said, "I want Mahalia Jackson tapes," because back then it was tapes. And she said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, I want that." And so I didn't know why I wanted it. I just knew that Mahalia had a voice that was soothing to me. And so at night, I would have it on replay and it would just play. So as the hits and the the impact of the abuse was happening, I would tune it out and I would just listen to Mahalia, and her voice was actually soothing and healing for me. It was something that even today, if I was to listen to her song, one of her songs, I would instantly cry, because it brought me back to my childhood and the scars that it left on me.
It's an emotional connection.
Yes, yes.
And really,
But I'm
really,
able to get through it now. Before therapy, I was stuck. You know, I think sometimes we think we go to therapy and that's just a one-time deal, but it's really not. It's a progression of healing. You know, you have to unpack the layers and really get to the root, because sometimes we don't know why we're choosing things in our adult life. It's because of the things that impacted us as kids. You know, so it had an impact on even my relationships and how I chose men, how I chose to be with the father of my children. You know, I said I would never have someone abuse me. I would never let that happen. But I ended up in a domestic violence marriage. My ex-husband wasn't physically abusive, but he was mentally and emotionally abusive. And so it was just, I don't know, I think that's worse, to be honest. You know, the scars can heal, but the emotional impact, I lost myself. I lost my self-worth. I lost my self-esteem. I didn't know who I was. I was much heavier than I am now. You know, I really just lost me. But I could tell you the power of forgiveness was actually healing for me, because I went through that process of, okay, this happened, but I'm no longer a victim. I can also become the victor if I choose to do the healing, and that takes work. That
thank you
takes work.
so much for speaking into that, because first of all, I must agree from experience as well. Being hit, being bruised, being even like bloodied in some way or another, sure, it hurts. It does hurt. It sure is. Sometimes it is even disabling, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it actually gets to your mental health as well.
Mm-hmm.
However, yes, you do indeed, most of the cases, not all, most of the
Right.
cases, you heal your physical, because the body naturally heals itself. We are created to constantly heal and improve
Yes.
all the cells of our body. The other part, which is a much different game, in a much different environment, is our emotional wellness, mental wellness, integrity, identity, belief system, all that is not seen at first, that is not
Right.
provable. So you cannot just go to the emergency room. Yeah, you what?
Mhm.
Well, he told me I was a bitch. Okay, and
Mhm. Mhm.
well, not okay. So I need help. Yeah, so
Mhm.
therapist and don't club that. It's like it's serious, okay?
Right.
And they just like differ. Yeah, go to the therapist. That's fine. Move on.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay,
Right.
you did right. You did really, really the right thing to find and to attract to you a therapist that resonated with you, that allowed you to do your inner work and to
Mm.
really dive into your shadow work. And I remember that I had to actually specify what inner work and shadow work is, because not 100% of the people understand what it actually
Mm.
means. And maybe you want to precise that, because that is a question that came a few times and I was like, whoa, I have to say that.
Mm.
Okay, let's say it. What is it?
Shadow work. That's a good question. I really can't answer that. I know the work that my therapists do with me, it's more, I would say she's always saying she's helping me heal my inner child.
Yes.
So I would presume that's part of it. And I didn't understand what she said when she said it. I was like, inner child, what does she mean by that? But she had me, because I'm a creative writer,
Yes.
she said, let's write a book. And I said, okay. And she said, name your chapters, name your trauma. And I said, okay, this is different. So it was like father hit mom, next chapter, ex-husband, manipulation, third chapter, ex-husband cheating, so it was, as I was naming my chapters, one by one, we will go through what happened, how did I feel, the impact that it left on me, and how can I heal and truly heal so I don't leave here, leave and live in that trauma. Because now sometimes I think if we don't address it, if we don't deal with the trauma will deal with us. And so I got to a place where I was like, I'm no longer carrying this. Yes, it happened. Yes, it hurt. Yes, I went through hell. Yes, it broke me. Yes, I lost who I was, but I can get it back. I can get it back. I don't have to live back there on domestic violence street. I don't have to live on that street anymore. My address has changed. I am now healed. I am now free. I am now allowed to be the person that I know I can be at my highest self. And so affirmations help me. I begin to speak the person I wanted to be, even though I couldn't see her in the mirror. I couldn't identify what that was. But the more I spoke, the more I visualized and used my imagination. And then I got a journal and I was specific in what I wanted to do, how I wanted to do it, what I wanted to be, how I wanted to become a better person. And slowly but surely, the layers of the trauma began to just pull back. And I'm not saying I'm 100%, whole, because I believe we still get triggered. We still get triggered. But the thing about it, because I did the work, I'm able to identify what triggers me, what would bring me back there to my childhood. And instantly I could just say, nope, we're not doing that. We're not going there again. We don't live there anymore. And that is what has really and truly spoke to my being, spoke to who I am as a person. And all my friends would say, oh my God, you are not the same person. And I would say, you're right. I'm not. I'm not. And I thank God that I'm not.
I see you, I recognize you, and I absolutely confirm as well that you are coming from a place of self-empowerment based on complete forgiveness of them, of you, because we also have a huge part of self-forgiveness to do, just because we stay there. Yeah, that is a
Yes.
big reason to forgive ourselves, right? So
Yes.
you just spoke into the inner child healing, and one of the methods to imagine to write a book of your life and to name the chapters, and by choosing which chapter you actually are choosing which trauma and which specific experiences that you want to have in that book, because it's too heavy to carry alone, basically.
Right.
If I complete the picture for the audience with the shadow work is a little bit the same, with a emphasis on I was so bad. I was an awful person. So I am going into my own shadow, my own places where I'm hiding all the time, where I messed up because I am responsible for all the abuse I got. And it really comes more into that place. And from there, the work is similar. Now, the methodology can change. Everybody has a different methodology, but the methodology can change. But what is really spoken into is, okay, what is your belief system and when did you get started on it? What was that first memory that comes back that may explain why you misbehaved that much, I mean, why you behaved that much misaligned with your true loving self, with your true love and light self, true nature.
Yes.
And when you're able to find the origin, from there, it is the domino effect. Oh, because as a toddler, I made that decision. Because when I was 7, I made that comment. Because I promised that when I was 5 years old. Yeah, it does continue your entire life until you say no more.
Yes.
And that no more is, okay, stop, I'm going to do my shadow work. What is it that actually lives in me and make me a point of attraction for even more things to be ungrateful for and feel mad about and be so reactive and so with reactive abuse and all kind of behaviors that you actually blame yourself for having.
Right.
So that is a part of the shadow work to make a difference, and that is really addressed to the audience, because I got that question a few times and I realized, it may not be that clear for everyone. Okay, so let's explain that.
Right. That is a good question. And thank you for clarifying it for me, because I've heard of it, but I never really understood exactly what it meant in detail. So that's a great question.
The number of modalities to help address and heal our inner trauma, our memories, our lifetime, as well as our past lives, because oftentimes we also do carry the burden of other lifetimes prior, and other times we also carry our ancestral defect, meaning everything from our ancestors, when in human form, when they messed up so much, but they actually transmit through the DNA this entire burden, until now we know it. And we put an end to it and we say, okay, no more. And by choosing to empower ourselves, to put an end to that toxic behavior and toxic belief system. It all starts with
Mm-hmm.
your, and you allow things because you believe that, like your
Right.
mom, believe that whatever, I'm too weak to leave, or I must stay for the children, something along
Right.
those, until suddenly she opens up her eyes and realize, well, my daughter is not here, therefore I'm not here either. Let me go back to her,
Right.
because at the end of the day, what I want is to feel
Mm.
at least a little bit good, because it doesn't feel good to be hit and abused all the time. Doesn't feel good at all.
It
So then there
doesn't.
is a choice. And when you make that choice, and you know it better than anybody else, when you make that choice, you choose love, you choose joy, you choose happiness, you choose to
Yes.
experience all of that, and you give yourself permission. And that is
Yes.
the second one. You give yourself permission
Mm-hmm.
to enjoy life and to
Yes.
be your best self and to serve
Absolutely.
people around you, right?
Yes. But you
Wow.
gotta forgive.
Oh yeah, that is a path. It goes through
You
that.
have to forgive.
Yeah. Forgiveness is one of the, I discovered one thing pretty recently. Forgiveness, that concept, is embedded in all world religions of any
Mm.
kind. You go through all the religions all around the earth, all around the times as
Mm-hmm.
well. Forgiveness is embedded in one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
that concept of stop holding on to the hurt, release it, let it be, and accept
Mm-hmm.
only what you choose to experience, being whole and being fine and being okay and being healed.
Yes. You have to forgive, because even with me and my story, it got to the point where before my father was actually killed by his so-called friend, um, he actually got to the house and poured gasoline on the building and lit the match. And by the time, you know, they discovered my father, he had already perished. But the forgiveness piece was definitely really, for me, it was vital that I got to a place where I could forgive the guy that did it, that committed that horrible crime. Um, and also forgive my father for the level of abuse that my mom had to suffer for, and what it did to me, how it scarred me. So forgiveness was definitely is vital. And I had to forgive my ex-husband, prior to after our separation. He ended up getting sick. He had a stem stroke, and he ended up in a coma for 9 months. Now, I'm the ex-wife. I don't have to be there. Um, but I chose to be there because I felt like that was the right thing to do. And I was no longer holding on to the things he did to me or the impact it had on our relationship. That was no longer an issue. This man was fighting for his life, so you put things into the right perspective at that moment. He can no longer hurt me. You know, everything that was done is done. All we have is now. And so at this moment, he needs support. He needs that positive energy. Um, and, unfortunately, we ended up taking him off of life support. But I learned a valuable lesson in all of that. If I didn't forgive him for all the stuff that me and him went through, there's no way I could have been there for him up until his last days. There's no way. And I really just thank God that I was able to do that and really show my kids, like, hey, dad didn't always get it right. I didn't always get it right. we both made some mistakes, but at the end of the day, we have to do the right thing for each other. And sometimes doing the right thing hurts. So
Yes, it's true. It is absolutely true. But sometimes doing the right thing, even though it hurts, it's actually freeing. Because you have
yes,
the conviction and you know in the deepest of your core that you are doing the right thing, meaning that you have nothing to guilt yourself about. You
right.
are clean and you can look at yourself in the mirror, look straight into your eyes and say, I know it hurts, but
Mm-hmm.
girl, good,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Last question for you, just before we wrap. Tell
Yeah.
us a little bit how you have brought into your professional life such a life experience. How are you making the world a better place and serving people around you?
Well, I do that many ways. I'm a playwright, so I taken my trauma and all my pain and turned it into something beautiful. So I create scripts that are geared towards domestic violence, um, whether it be grief, real life situations that we go through on a day-to-day basis. And I take those stories and I create a script, and I've been producing my own off-Broadway productions. And it has been so rewarding for me. Also another healing tool, because now I get to change the narrative. I get to change the story, how the story ends. So even though on stage, the character may be going through her own abuse, but at the end, we get to see the transformation, we get to see the healing taking place. And so people need to know that that is obtainable. And I use the stage as my platform to do it, and I love it. And then I write books. Um, I've written my first book and I wrote a second book, which is on a whole different topic. So, I just use my creative arts, my creative energy, and to change the narrative and, allow people. And I also have a platform called the Healing Exchange, where I interview those who've been in domestic violence, who've been through any type of trauma, who've been sick, who've also healed from that sickness, because we want to not just talk about what we've been through, but we want to share how we got through it and where we are now, because people need to see there is a way out. It doesn't always end in a bad way. So yeah, I have that and I love it. I love just storytelling. I love storytelling. So I use whatever I can to allow people to change their narrative.
How amazing. Keisha, thank you so much for creating a space for people to connect, to watch other people's stories, to
Yes.
feel acknowledged in their own secret pain. So that actually it is not a secret, because too many people go through that. So we better actually talk about it and heal from it and forgive and really
Absolutely.
let go and choose differently. And you are doing exactly that through your script writing, Off-Broadway, all of that, those plays, those books. Oh my gosh. So I would love to actually be a part of your healing hub, of course, because with such a story, it's like, of course, yeah, we're going to share. So, I mean, I'm also victorious over 15 years of domestic violence with two
Mm-hmm.
different stories. And
Yeah.
11 years ago, it all ended. And now I'm 11 years into all those wonderful rising after abuse stories,
Yes.
You come back to yourself, you find yourself, you forgive, you understand and really search deep. What is
Mm-hmm.
that?
Mm-hmm.
And I had a lot of shadow work to do, because I
Mm.
was blaming myself so much for what was going on. that it was extremely hard to actually release that own self. And
Yes.
once I did it, it's like, wow, that's something I'm going to give to the audience, and then we are going to wrap up. One
Okay.
of the key things I decided to feel happy, so that happiness is a much bigger overarching feeling rather than that negative, heavy emotional pain. Because emotional pain, I know it to the point of feeling it physically. So this is how much I know emotional pain. And I decided to say, let me bring up the volume of emotional happiness, joy, and beautiful feelings, so that actually prevail over that emotional pain. And one of the way I go about that is that at any moment in time, I stop in my track and I remind myself, smile with all your heart. Yeah. And just the fact of smiling, it changes your chemistry, and you will be happier.